Each offseason, every team comes in with a plan to either rebuild, retool, or just get better. Well, in the NFC East, each team was looking to make improvements. Well, each team did that or they didn't. So let's take a look at what team did make improvement and what team didn't make an improvement. So let's start out with the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders coming off a year with a little bit of disappointment where everybody thought they were going to do well, but they didn't. They had some ups and downs. They didn't have great quarterback play, and everybody was really wanting to see more Sam Howell. They ended up only playing him in the last game of the season. And in reality, he didn't look too great, didn't look too bad. He was just okay. So what did the Commanders look to do this offseason? Well, the Commanders looked to add these positions. They looked to add quarterback, offensive line depth, linebacker, D-line depth, tight end depth, and linebackers. The Commanders ended up receiving Jacoby Brissett in a off-season signing. They got Andrew Wiley from the Chiefs in a great signing, actually, that is going to help improve their offensive tackle depth. They got Trenton Scott, Nick Gates, Tyler Lawson, Abdullah Anderson, Deron Payne. They re-signed him. They got F.A. Abdaba, Cody Barton, David Mayo, Cameron Dantzler, which I think is a great signing off waivers from the Vikings because I think he's going to help them actually improve their cornerback depth and actually help them in the defensive back area. And they also got Danny Johnson. But the Commanders did lose Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke, Ollie McCain, Cole Holcomb, J.D. McKissick, Trey Turner, John Bostic, Nick Martin, Jarrett Patterson, and Eli Wolf. Cole Holcomb was a really good linebacker for the Commanders, and I think losing him is going to be a huge loss for them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Ollie McCain was a decent safety, not someone that really is going to be a huge miss. Trey Turner was okay, not the greatest, but I think he's going to be a miss as well. No, I thought the loss of Taylor Heineke was huge for the Commanders as he was somebody that the team really wanted to play for and play around, and he was someone that gave up his last start of the season for someone like Sam Howell, and you could clearly tell that the locker room really liked him. And then the fact that he's no longer there is really, I think, going to hurt them in the long run, and maybe someone that's just not going to be there and be a locker room leader. So it's going to suck. Carson Wentz not being there, no big deal. He really wasn't that good for them and just not a great piece all around, and they gave up a draft pick for him, so not a great pick. In my opinion, the Commanders' offseason needs were fulfilled slightly, but by the additions of Jacoby Brissett and who was going to come in and challenge Sam Howell for a starting spot. But I think if I was Ron Rivera, I would go with Sam Howell and see what the future is going to look with him. And if he's not good, go with Jacoby Brissett. And if ultimately this team is not going to be good, they could ultimately just draft one of the top quarterbacks next year in Drake May or Caleb Williams. But that's up for debate on if Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett will not be good. The Andrew Wiley signing was a great signing, in my opinion, to fix the tackle spot, but they didn't really fix the big needs that they had. Cornerback is still a position of need, and really defensive line is also a slight need of depth-wise because you don't know if Chase Young is going to be there. Linebacking core, I don't know if you fully fix that position because you didn't really get anybody better to fix the losses of Cole Holcomb and John Bostic. You got Cody Barton and David Mayo, but they aren't great. We'll see what the Commanders do through the draft. They have a decent pick. Maybe they select Bijan Robinson to maybe just get that extra oomph in their offense and stuff like that to just muster a better offense and get the pressure off their quarterback play. Who knows? Eric Bieniemy is coming in to see if this offense can be changed, and maybe we'll see if Eric Bieniemy is the actual offensive-minded coach he is, and if it wasn't just Andy Reid really doing everything. So we'll see how everything goes for the Commanders, and now let's transition into the New York Giants. So the New York Giants came to the offseason with questions of, are they going to be able to pay their two big free agents, in which they did by franchise tagging Saquon Barkley and the other giving a huge contract to of Daniel Jones. But what were their team needs going into the offseason? Well, interior offensive line at the guard and center positions, tight end, wide receiver, linebacker, and cornerback. And did they fulfill those positions? I think they did by just based off the names they've gotten and re-signed and brought back. The Giants signed a lot of players to help this team improve and get better. They re-signed Daniel Jones and franchise tag Saquon Barkley, like I mentioned. They re-signed Matt Breida to get that running back depth. They brought in Paris Campbell, Jamison Crowder, re-signed Sterling Sharp, re-signed Darius Slayton, traded for Darren Waller, which was a huge trade this offseason. And if I'm going to be honest, that was going to fix their tight end depth. But the question is he going to be able to stay healthy and be able to provide that offensive weapon that Daniel Jones needs. That is up for debate, and hopefully he can, because I would really like to see that, and that Giants offense can take off and be even special in Brian Daboll's offense. They re-signed Jahad Ward. They signed Raheem Nunez-Roches. They signed Ashawn Robinson. They re-signed Gerard Davis. They signed Bobby Okereke, Amario Arie, Bobby McCain. Re-signed Jamie Gillian and re-signed their long snapper Casey Creeder. So obviously, based off these moves, they brought in a lot of talent, and I think these moves are going to be huge. Bobby Okereke is a really good off-ball linebacker, and someone that if you watch the tape for and even watch just on Sundays, he's going to be really good and a really good linebacker to do so, and he's going to help that Giants defense. Amario Arie, I think he's a good corner. I think he's decent enough to help the Giants in the long run. I don't think he's going to be that top echelon of corners, but I think he's serviceable enough to at least help that Giants defense. But the Giants did lose Julian Love, John Feliciano, and Nick Gates. I don't think those are huge losses besides Julian Love, but otherwise, I think they got a lot in return this offseason, and I think they also brought back a lot of key players to that winning team they had last year. The Giants made a lot of signings to fill the holes they had, and I feel the signings filled some of the needs. But they also still need to fill the interior offensive line and the wide receiver holes. They did bring back some guys, but we'll see what happens. In the draft, while this cornerback, tight end, and linebacker positions was signed / traded for during the free agency, and they made great moves. I personally think they made great moves, but we'll see what they do during the draft, and I think they may draft someone like a Zay Flowers or a Jordan Addison, but I don't think they're going to be in a position for a Quentin Johnson or a Jackson Smith-Njigba. We'll see, but that is just my opinion. Now, we're switching to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys came to the offseason with a lot of question marks needing to be made. On the offensive, were they going to be able to find another target outside of CeeDee Lamb and be able to get rid of Ezekiel Elliott? And on the defensive side of the ball, were they going to be able to get another cornerback outside of Trayvon Diggs and improve the defensive back depth in the room? And how are they going to fix the interior defensive line? Well, the Cowboys kind of answered that this offseason with the additions of Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, but they also re-signed Cooper Rush, Ronald Jones. They also re-signed Tony Pollard. They re-signed Dante Fowler, re-signed Jonathan Hankins, re-signed Leighton Vander Esch. They also re-signed Donovan Wilson. They also signed Chuma Edoga and re-signed Tack McKinley. I think these additions are good, and some of the re-signings they made were good because they are great depth pieces and pieces that definitely will help the Cowboys, but I think they are still lacking on the interior defensive line. I think they're still going to look to improve on that, and I think if they can, the draft is going to be a big piece. Maybe if they can get another wide receiver, because Michael Gallup is maybe not the same person that they were when they signed him to that big deal. I think they could look for a better wide receiver number 3, but they should look for interior defensive line in the draft and maybe interior offensive line, because they did lose Connor McGovern, and they also lost a tight end in Dalton Schultz. They lost Noah Brown, Zeke, Anthony Barr, Anthony Brown, T.Y. Hilton, Jason Peters, Carlos Watkins, and all those names. Are they going to need another back? If Bijan Robinson falls from, are they going to take him? I mean, there's a bunch of questions that the Cowboys have. Are they going to enter it in the draft, or are they going to look for players to trade for, especially since there's still some players to be traded? I think the Cowboys have fixed a lot of the holes this offseason, and they basically have won it. And I still think, into people's eyes, that they're going to be another contender, but I think if they can fix it even more on the draft, this team is going to be scary in 2023. Now, the Eagles. People didn't really seem like there was many holes in there, but they needed depth pieces. And that was really the big question, is if they were going to be able to get the depth pieces and if they were going to be able to afford to bring back everyone. But they weren't. So who did they bring back? Who did they bring in? Well, they brought in Marcus Mariota, Rashad Penny, re-signed Boston Scott, on an Almine Zekachis. I apologize for this pronunciation. They re-signed Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, brought in Nicholas Morrow, re-signed James Bradbury, re-signed Darius Slade, brought in Greedy Williams, Terrell Edmonds, and Justin Evans. Those honestly are great re-signings and signings. They're going to fill pieces that were lost in free agency because players got bigger contracts elsewhere, and I think that's going to help fix holes. Now they lost Kaiser White, Zach Pascal, Miles Sanders, TJ Edwards, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Gardner Minshew, Marcus Epps, Javon Hargrave, and Andre Dillard. The biggest names are Devon Hargrave and Gardner Johnson, while Gardner Minshew and stuff like that. Oh, and TJ Edwards, obviously, as he was a good linebacker for him. As you can see, the Eagles lost a lot of pieces, but they were able to bring in some, but they also have the 10th overall pick in the draft. They're going to be able to get a piece to help rebuild and retool the positions they have in this draft. They're not going to be some slumps just waiting until pick 30 and get somebody that possibly is going to be a bust because of how late they pick. No, they picked number 10 because Howie Roseman made a great trade last year with the Saints, because the Saints traded up to get Chris Olave. This trade that they made last year really panned out well, and man, they're going to get a great player with this. They're going to get Lucas Van Ness or a Nolan Smith or just somebody to help fill that defensive line piece that they just lost. But the Eagles did lose pieces, but I think the success last year is still going to be good because they're going to be able to draft some depth back. And especially since you're going to go to a Super Bowl winning team and not start right away, they can take a player that needs to develop more than normal because he's going to be able to sit behind a lot of veterans on that D-line or really anywhere, especially on that offense line too. So, in my opinion, the Eagles had a pretty good offseason. Basically, every team in the NFC East, besides maybe the Commanders, had a really good offseason based off these additions that they had. I thank you all for watching. Please click that like button, make sure it turns blue. Click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that way you're notified for any videos. Have a good day, everyone.